Good evening. This is Congregation Va-Dor, and this is our monthly Controversial Issues Forum. And we're delighted to have Rabbi Barry Silver with us. And our guest is Reverend Pastor Winton Hill from Stamford, Connecticut, with us online. And take it away, gentlemen.
Hey, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Rabbi Sam Silver, Controversial Issues Series, named after my dad, founding rabbi of Congregation Va-Dor. He loved to get people together of different sides and just discuss issues. And he always said, we need to learn to disagree agreeably. And so he was all for letting people hear different sides of issues. And that's the best way to get to know people, to educate, and to break down barriers. And the whole purpose of this is not only to educate and inform, but also to convey the concept that we do not have to agree with each other in order to like each other, work together, love one another, respect one another. It's perfectly okay. And today, in today's world, people think, oh no, I disagree with him, therefore I must hate that person. He holds a different view, I can't talk to that person. We try to dispel that false notion by opening up dialogue. And I want to thank Rachel Drucker for making this possible. She's the liaison. She told me about Pastor Winton Hill. He runs 19 different churches in the Jersey area. He's a pastor at his own church. He's prolific as a writer. And we're looking forward to having a very engaging discussion. Rachel is from Stamford. Pastor Hill is from Stamford. And I was raised in Stamford, and I love Stamford, Connecticut. And I think it's great that you live there. I might come up and visit one time because I'd love to visit my old haunts up there at the Newfield Swim Club over on Nutmeg Lane and Rippewam High School, Oliver Sholem, which doesn't exist anymore. It went extinct a long time ago. So it's great to have you. Pastor Hill wrote an article about critical race theory. It's a big topic in the news today. I think that it would be great to discuss it. Pastor Hill and I have definite views on it, and but we are not the only ones who do. Everyone here on the Zoom is welcome to share their views, contrast their views, and anything goes. You don't have to be politically correct. You don't have to be religiously correct. We encourage people to speak their mind. Once in a while, I might get up and walk around because I been playing tennis a little too much lately. My back's getting a little stiff, so I might have to walk around a little bit. But I'm very much looking forward to Pastor Hill, and we'll also talk about some other issues as they come up, or those that are at your mind. So, Pastor Hill, I'd like you to share any thoughts with us you like about your background and what you do, and then also tell us your thoughts on critical race theory. And welcome to Congregation Va-Dor.
Well, thank you so much. And I am indeed highly honored. I have been involved in ministry all my life. I knew I wanted to be a pastor when I was 17 years old and prepared for ministry. I have served as a United States Army chaplain, and during the first Desert Storm Gulf War, I was the chaplain in charge of the enemy prisoner of war ministry for the United States Army. And we had 70,000 Muslim prisoners. We had Jewish soldiers, Christians of many stripes, and atheists. And it was my responsibility to make sure that everybody was respected and that nobody was harmed by anybody else. And one of the things that Rachel and I laugh about is that I told her the biggest secret of the Desert Storm War was that we had 400 Jewish soldiers on a ship doing a Seder. And we had to keep that secret from our Saudi allies. And surely in this world, there's room for more understanding and less hatred.
Pastor, do you think that it's proper for you to have to hide things from the Saudis? Why can't you just tell them we have Jewish soldiers and we respect their religion, and maybe you should too? In Saudi Arabia, they have no synagogues. No Jewish people are allowed. I don't even know if they live there. But why not tell them?
They don't have any
We're your ally,
inside.
and we believe in freedom, and you should too.
Yeah, they don't have any Christians in Saudi Arabia either.
No. But why not tell them? Why do you cater to their prejudices?
Well,
why not just say?
We thought it was a security risk for the soldiers.
All right.
And it was a matter of their lives.
Yeah.
The Muslim imams from Saudi Arabia did attend my chapel.
Very nice. I
And,
want to ask you something else, Pastor. What do you think about Abu Ghraib, since you were involved with the prisoners? What was your reaction to that?
Well, I was horrified. That was the next phase of the war. I wasn't there then. When I was there, nothing like that happened because, again, I think the climate was different. The Army was much more in the control of the line of command, the chain of command. And in the Second World War, a lot of that was privatized. And when you get private people involved, things get out of hand real fast.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry to derail you. I just couldn't resist asking a question. Go ahead. Continue on.
Okay. Well, I'm thankful to talk about what some people call critical race theory. I choose to call it anti-bias education. Critical race theory has been now kind of used as a political tool to incite a lot of emotions. Even the name critical race theory leaves a ton of questions in the air. And it was really developed as a strategy by some scholars to do the intersection of racism with public policies as they have been enacted over our history in the United States. There are a lot of things that Americans just don't know. And this anti-bias education is a step in the direction of equipping all Americans with the real history of this country. Many textbooks say that the first slaves arrived in America in 1619 at Jamestown. That is inaccurate. The first Black people arrived the African people arrived in Jamestown in 1619. However, they were not slaves. They were indentured servants, just like the Europeans, and they eventually received their freedom. It took 100 years of legislation to get African Americans in this country into slavery. It was not an immediate process. It was done by one legal enactment after the next. People don't know that because they haven't been taught that. And anti-bias education is designed to increase the understanding of differences and their value to society. So the journey that some people have had in this country has been very different from others. In North Carolina and in Virginia in the early 1700s, laws were passed that Black people who own property could not leave their property to their children when they died. So when we talk about racism, white privilege, and that kind of thing, it's backed up by many, many legal enactments. And this is not an effort to embarrass white people or make white children feel inferior. It's really to equip them so that they can be more competitive in a global world. And if I think that for Americans, equity has to always be an issue for us. It should be a core value for Americans. And we should really attempt to not judge people by the group of people they're with. All Jewish people are not the same. All African American people are not the same. All white people are not the same. All of us have different, all Chinese people are not the same. All men are not the same. All women are not the same. So this is an effort to lead people to an understanding of humanity. And in my little article I put in there from the New Testament, there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave or free, nor is there male or female, for you are all one. Now that's a great statement. We haven't lived it out. Our practice is very different from that, but that is where we should be as a core value.
Pastor, tell us, where do you think the schools in general in America have gone wrong? What is it that they're not teaching that they should? What are they overlooking? Where have they gone wrong? What's your opinion? And is that what critical race theory is all about?
Yeah, I think the schools were doing pretty good until now. And I mean, I think the climate of government at this point, particularly from the right, is restrictive. And there's a new value system, and that is that parents know what's best for their children exclusively. And often the parents have not done the research and they have not looked into it. They just listened to some propaganda. So we have parents now dictating curriculum in the schools. I don't know what would happen if parents went to the school and said, we don't want any more geography, we don't want any more trigonometry, we don't want any more English taught. I don't know what would happen, but they feel safe doing this because this is for them the other. So what we are now having is books being banned in the school. And that brings me to the Nazi Germany. Before they could do the terrible Holocaust they did, they had to make people ignorant. So they burned books. They wanted people to have only one perspective. And now in America, we find in this land, for the first time that I know about, a real barn burning exercise of literature because they don't want it in the schools.
Are you familiar with the effort to suppress the teaching of evolution that's been going on pretty much ever since Darwin? Do you have any thoughts about that? Parents get up and say, I don't want my kids learning about evolution. I want you to teach another side to it, and trying to dictate to the schools how they should teach evolution science. Do you agree with those parents who are trying to prevent evolution or present another side? Do you agree with that effort or no?
I do not agree with it because I think that the essence of education is learning. And just because you learn something, doesn't mean that you have to accept it 100%. I do think that I interpret scripture correctly, but my first Bible teacher, my first Old Testament teacher, I was flunking the course. And he called me in and asked me why. And my answer was, I don't believe what you're teaching me. And he said, well, don't believe it, just tell me what I told you. And it opened a whole new world up for me that I would have never been able to enjoy. Because I was able to rightly understand scripture instead of building it on the common assumptions that have been taught in my popular piety growing up in a church.
What does that mean? Does that mean, do you think that evolution happened and scripture is true, or how do you reconcile this?
I think that scripture and evolution are not opposite to each other. You know, I don't know how God created stuff. I'm not that smart. And I don't think that people with evolution know either. Now, I think some pieces of evolution had to be examined. You know, when I was younger, they used to say that human beings came from a monkey. Well, I know that's not true. But there could have been some common ancestor that we grew in different ways from. So again, I think that we look at science and we appreciate science, but we filter it. Now, science is different from my religious faith. I honestly, 100% believe that God created the world. And I also believe that the people who wrote Genesis described it the best way they could. And in Genesis, we have two creation stories right behind each other. So they didn't intend for us to take it literally.
So you're not sure, you don't believe that Adam and Eve actually existed?
I believe men and women existed.
Let's talk about the critical race theory now. So the people who are opposed to it are saying that there's people who have an agenda. And because of this agenda, they're not teaching factual history. They've got some slant that they're trying to push, and they're saying that the people who are teaching critical race theory are trying to make white people feel guilty, and they're trying to make Black people today feel that they're permanent victims, and they're still victims today, and that this is giving a false impression about history, and that some of them are saying that the Southerners didn't fight the Civil War because of slavery, is mostly because of state rights and to preserve their way of life. What's your response to all of these criticisms of critical race theory?
Their arguments are all revisionist history and false. The American Civil War was absolutely fought over slavery. There are documents all over this country that were written by Southerners that explicitly stated that this war was about slavery. The United States has had a wonderful history of being able to compromise politically on almost every issue. But on the issue of slavery, there was no compromise. And that created the conflict. Slavery, and I'm not talking about what Northern people said. I'm talking about if you go back and read the legislative records of the South, they said it was slavery. And it was only 10 years after the Civil War that the literature came out that this was not about slavery, it was about a lost cause. But they didn't define what that lost cause was. And the only thing that was lost was slavery.
Pastor, I couldn't agree with you more. If you look at the records like South Carolina, when they explained why they were seceding from the Union, they specifically said slavery. And then afterwards, there was a complete effort to whitewash and revise history. And it's shameful that people are trying to rewrite history. Everybody knows it was about slavery. States' rights was just an excuse or a vehicle to try to promote and preserve slavery. Are you concerned at all about the criticism they're making that critical race theory might cause some Blacks to feel like they're permanent victims and not take responsibility for what's going on today? Are you concerned about that at all?
I think that's a false premise. I think education frees up everybody. And we live in a society where more and more people seem to be trying to get away from being accountable. And I think people have to own up to whatever that history is so that we can improve it and do better. There's some terrible things that happen in American history that should never be repeated. But if we don't tell the story, then we have the risk that we may again commit some of the crimes we committed in the past.
You said that in the past, you believe slavery was taught fairly accurately. Do you think that they failed or they're failing now to go into the detail and the actual facts regarding slavery, and they're just kind of like glossing it over so people kind of like lose sense of how horrible and despicable it was and how long it lasted? You know, you teach something in a day or a week and you get the impression this is just a minor phase of history, but you tend to lose sight. These were people living under abject misery for centuries. And do you believe that the schools are not adequately teaching about how horrible it was in order to make sure that we realize that there's still vestiges of it today? Because that's really what critical race theory, I believe, is about. It's not glossing it over and going into the details and also explaining how this is endemic in American society. Is that your concern also?
Well, let me share this experience. I was born in the state of North Carolina, in a little town of 300 people called Crestwell. In that town is a state park called Pettigrew State Park, which is a former plantation owned by the Collins family. My great-grandfather was born on that plantation in the condition of slavery. People think that slavery was a long time ago, but it really wasn't very long ago. And when the first time I visited that plantation, guide said that the slaves on that plantation were happy. And my response was that slavery and happiness were incongruent. But again, unless you can define a group of people as less than you, less deserving than you, less humane than you, then you can't mistreat them. And the fact that Barack Obama was elected president of the United States created an identity crisis for a lot of white people. And they're trying to struggle with that because they cannot conceive of the fact that there was an African American living in the White House and governing this nation and was elected twice. So this is the historical response to whatever is perceived of as African American progress. Yeah. It happened after the Civil War. Reconstruction came. African American legislators really gave birth to what we know as the public school system today. But when I went to high school, they told me that all of those people were corrupt and none of them made any contribution to government. So the critical race theory, anti-bias education is an effort to correct that record.
Yeah, you remind me of the story about Charles Darwin. When Darwin was on the Beagle, the captain was a racist, and the captain had this person who worked for him who was an indigenous person from South America, and Darwin criticized bitterly this practice of enslaving people that the British found down there. And the captain said what you were relating also. Oh, she's very happy. Says, I don't think so. So says, well, we can ask her. So he asked this slave, are you happy? And she said, oh, yes, I'm quite happy. And Darwin said, do you really think that she's at liberty to say how she feels with you standing right there? If she was free, do you think she's actually free to say what she thinks when you have the power of life or death over her? And he was so incensed that he threw out Darwin. Darwin was sharing a cabin with him. He threw him out and said, I don't want to be with you anymore. And then the other people on the ship vied with each other to see who would be able to take in Darwin, because they all agreed with his courage. And it is something that's shameful when people say, oh yes, these people enjoyed being enslaved. It's really despicable, especially when they're not able to speak up for themselves freely. And I do agree with you and your observations. What do you think about the level of discrimination in America today? So today, the many people are saying, well, that was a while ago, and now fortunately it's all gone. Now today everything's good. So why dwell on the past? Why bring it up? Everything's okay now. What's your reaction to that?
My experience has been that there is de facto segregation. And it's coded, it's covert, and it's documented that when white people go to the bank to get a loan, they have a different level of scrutiny than people of color. Even where you can buy a house. Where I live in Stamford, Connecticut is next door to a town called Darien. 2 weeks ago on a Sunday, I got home late from church. I usually walk in the park. This Sunday, I decided to walk in this community, which meant that I walked in Darien. A nice man came up to me, had a nice conversation with a smile on his face, who lives a block and a half from me. And he asked me, where did I live? And I told him. And he looked at me and smiled and said, it sounds like a nice place for you to walk.
Well, let me ask you something, Pastor Hill. What do you have kids?
I have 5 children altogether.
Okay. What did you tell your kids as they began school, like they're 5, 6 years old and they're going to school? What did you tell them? Did you say, hey kids, you know what, you're going to learn stuff in school and it's not really all accurate. They're going to This is what you really need to know. This is what really happened in history. Let me fill you in because you're going to hear a bunch of stuff, and I want you to know what the straight story. Did you have like the talk with your kids and tell them to prepare them before they enter the public school?
I did not.
Why not?
They matriculated fairly well. One of the things I did notice in preschool, my oldest daughter, who now teaches at the University of Kentucky, her first school was the Jewish Community Center in Cincinnati. And I didn't say anything to her, but it was interesting that when she came home, the only teacher's name that she remembered was the African-American teacher who was on staff.
Well, why
Now,
didn't you have?
She did learn other teachers.
Yeah. Why didn't you have a talk with your kids to tell them what you think they might not have heard in the public schools? Is it because you've had confidence that public schools got it right in those days?
Reverend Hill, if you like me to,
I think
I would love to interject.
Go ahead. We'd love to hear from you. Go right ahead.
Oh, that's
Tell
my
us,
daughter.
tell us who you are.
That's my second daughter, Edith.
Go ahead, Edith.
Hi,
Go ahead.
Mr. Silver. I happen to be Reverend Hill's daughter, so I can firsthand speak
That's
to
Rabbi Silver.
Rabbi Silver, excuse me.
Thanks.
I
It's
could
a pleasure to
firsthand-
have you. Thanks.
Thank you. I could firsthand speak to his rearing and upbringing. And
Edith, is this your first time speaking with a rabbi?
it is not.
Okay,
It is
good.
not.
All right, go ahead.
I've been blessed to raised in a household that values all religion and particularly other cultures of the oppressed. I actually, he told the story about my older sister going to a Jewish preschool, but I also in Xenia, Ohio, went to a Jewish preschool, and it's something magical about inclusion. I also learned, about Hanukkah. When the seasons came around, I didn't know that we weren't going to do the whole thing that I learned in school, because I was just a student that was a part of it, and inclusion was also important in our house. But Rabbi Silver, to go back to your point about explicit education, I was always exposed to the truth, which was important. But more than that, I was exposed to high expectations and understanding how important it was for me to seize the moment and seize the opportunity, even if it was more difficult, even if I didn't receive the same priming that other people had that were sitting next to me, and be competitive. My dad would always say that you don't have to be the smartest, but you do have to be there, be counted and be among it and absorb what's going on. A story that I like to tell all the time is one of an expectation. We moved to Stamford, Connecticut when I was in the 7th grade. I started school, my dad and my mom dropped me off. They gave me some sort of achievement test. I took the test and then they put me in a class. I came home that first day of school and my dad asked me, how was school? I said, it was great. I'm in the 2 group. There were 4 groups. My dad said, well, if there's a 2, there must be a 1. And the very next day, he accompanied me to school. And that day, my class was changed. And it taught me the importance of advocacy. It taught me the importance of access. And it taught me the importance of solidifying your space so that you could be ready and prepared for the next opportunity. So I really think that that's the work that we have to do in advocacy. I'm joined by my colleague, Jennifer Forman, here today. She and I are a part of a organic kind of homegrown organization here in Stamford called the Alliance for Black Achievement. And we came together just based on people having conversations about lack of achievement, lack of exposure, and lack of opportunity for Black students in the town of Stamford. And Stamford's an awesome city. It has great potential. I'm proud to raise my family here. I'm proud to be a graduate of this school system. Every year we send kids to Harvard, to Yale, to Dartmouth, to Princeton, to UPenn. Unfortunately, those children aren't as representative of our school district. So the Alliance of Black Achievement was formed to advocate on the behalf of Black students to make sure that those same outcomes, that same potential is actualized by every member of our society. We all spend 13 years in the school system, if you count kindergarten to 12th grade, and we just want to ensure that same return on investment for our entire city population.
I want to compliment both of you on running this amazing organization, and also your father did an amazing job, obviously raising you and being the type of minister that we don't see enough of. Someone who has great pride in his own tradition, but also has great love and respect for other traditions and teaches an inclusive type of approach to religion that builds bridges of understanding rather than walls of separation. And obviously he did a great job with you, and this organization is wonderful, and I'm glad that you're letting people know about it. I want to ask you, because I think the two of you would be in a good position to know, as well as your dad, do you think that there are some African Americans who feel that, well, my ancestors went through slavery, so I don't really have to, I have an excuse, or I don't have to work so hard because it's not my fault. I have all these impediments against me, and so somebody should bail me out because of all that my people have gone through. I want to ask your opinion on that, because you're looking at Black achievement. Do you think that, I'm not saying everybody, but is there a mindset among some Blacks like, hey, I went through slavery, make it up to me? Do you find that or no?
I don't at all find that, Rabbi Silver. And I think that to what my dad talked about earlier, there has been systemic and strategic things in the legislation done throughout. Like slavery is one thing, but let's talk about subsidized housing. Let's talk about Cabrini Green. Let's talk about housing projects. Let's talk about all of the strategic things that were done over time to wear down esteem and potential and mindset. So I haven't ever talked to anyone who says, I'm up for the free ride now that America has abused me. Because guess what? The free ride is not coming. People are still enduring the hardships and unfortunately the effects of systemic racism and slavery and Jim Crowism and redlining and all of the subsequent legislations that happened behind that. It's not the thought to come and hook me up. It's just really, in my personal experience, a survivor mentality. What do I do to make it from here to there?
Let me ask you this, and we always ask probing questions here at Va-Dor. Do you think that, well, there's obviously a disparity between the achievement level of African Americans and the white population, and it's across the board. It's in income and education and the level of crimes and violence. Do you ascribe that difference strictly to the past, slavery, discrimination, and things that white people did? Or do you think that there's anything, this is for all three of you, I guess, do you think there's anything going on in the Black community that is at all responsible or accountable for some of that difference?
Jennifer, I'll let you go. I saw your hand. And I love your passion.
Thank you. I also wanted to say, just in response to the previous question, and I'm a proud member of Temple Sinai here in Stamford, so I feel like I can ask this question.
By the way, that temple was founded by my father.
Really? Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Good to know.
A long time ago.
I've never heard anybody ask the Jewish community, do we feel like we should just, kind of sit back and accept whatever is given to us because we were, targeted during the Holocaust? That kind of question is a little, I don't know. I wonder.
Well, I've heard that asked of Jewish people quite a few times. In other words, you think that because of the Holocaust, everybody should now bend over backwards to accommodate you or to be kind to you, or you get special treatment because you've been subjected to the Holocaust. I've heard that asked and responded to many, many times.
I've never heard it, so I guess maybe I'm in the wrong circles, but.
Well, I hang out. I listen to a lot of anti-Semites.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. I try to avoid those kind of confrontational conversations, but just in terms of what, and what Edith and I are doing with, and we're not the leaders of it, it's a collective organization. So we're just two representatives from it for the Alliance for Black Achievement. But we look at the disparities not as, and I have to kind of bring in all the stuff that I've been reading lately by Kendi and Wilkerson, and to say the differences, because we know that race is a social construct. There's no biological basis for the way that we categorize people. And I also have a PhD in religion, so I can go to that place as well. And I want to keep it at this level. But
you're saying that races don't exist?
Races are a social construct, so they do exist in society, and they are what we create. Yes.
Okay.
But biologically, they do not exist. Our genetics my genetics could be closer to Edith's than they are to yours. And I'm Ashkenazi.
Okay.
That's just a biological fact. So, so to attribute, what has happened over the years is that, we have been, and I might disagree with Reverend Hill that I think the history has not been taught as it should be. I think we were getting to that point, which is why we're seeing the backlash. But, I certainly wasn't taught in the, 70s and 80s, the real history. I thought, oh, we're living in the post-civil rights era, the laws have been changed, everything's fine. Come to realize that that's not the case, because there are so many other systems set up to really keep Black Americans from achieving to the level that other people can. So when we look at what's going on in the school system, we see that there are disparities, and we can look at the reasons for the disparities. It's not that there are different intelligences. It's different access to education. So, I was lucky, I was able to send my kids to the JCC preschool before they went to the Stamford public schools. But, if you're living in poverty, which, most of the Black residents in Stamford, the median income disparities are quite large here between whites and Blacks. They don't necessarily aren't able to afford a good preschool the way that my family was able to. And that puts them at a disadvantage going into kindergarten. And those disadvantages continue, throughout their schooling. And the systems in place, when you look at for the same infraction, students, Black students get punished in a different way than white students do.
What about affirmative action? I mean, there's a lot of Black kids who will get into a college before the white kid will, because they take Blacks on if you have like two equal students, they'll take the Black kid over the white kid in the colleges, Ivy League schools. That goes on, doesn't it? Aren't there certain advantages that?
Well, I don't think that's an advantage. I think that so.
Is that an advantage if you get into an Ivy League school because you're a race?
Overcome the number of obstacles to be able to be at the same level that the white student has, I think that you have more than proven yourself to be there.
But not every Black person goes through obstacles, though. It's not like every single Black person has lived under oppression and discrimination. There are some people who are Black who are doing pretty well. They're
just because you're doing well does not mean that you have not encountered obstacles in your life.
No, so, I understand that, but I'll just tell you something that my son applied to Ivy League schools. And to suggest that him getting accepted to an Ivy League school would not have been an advantage. I can't fathom that. It's a tremendous advantage to be accepted into an Ivy League school or to get accepted to a better college. These are great advantages. I mean, he got into a couple of them, but the preference for minorities in the Ivy League schools is clear. So I guess,
Rabbi,
yeah, go
if
ahead.
I might.
Go ahead, Pastor Hill, weigh in on this.
Yeah, if I might. Most of the students who get the greatest differential treatment for admission to Ivy League schools are children of people who graduated from Ivy League schools.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it's a lot more. It's a lot more of them than it is African American children.
Yeah, that's a good point. But you would agree that if you get into an Ivy League school, it's a pretty good advantage. I mean, you're probably gonna do pretty well.
I agree it's a wonderful thing to go to Ivy League school.
Yeah.
I challenge the premise that that the qualification for going to school for every student is exactly the same, because I know it's not. Because most white children go to Ivy League schools and they have a lower standard of admission.
Well, you raised a good point about being related to someone in an Ivy League school. That's going to certainly preference white kids. But I know people who work in admissions at colleges, and they told me absolutely no doubt about it. If you're a minority student and you have the same qualifications, you're in. You're going to be definitely.
Rabbi Silverman, I'd like to venture to elevate the conversation away from Ivy League schools. So if we look at stature in this country, LeBron James, who arguably is probably the most influential African-American of our time, still goes outside to see nigger spray painted on his gate. So when we talk about influence and leveling up, it doesn't surmount racism, and it doesn't surmount bigotry, and it doesn't surmount your kids being targets of hate.
Well,
so I think that we need to kind of pivot the conversation regarding race and access.
Let me be clear.
Yep.
The fact that there are certain things that might be done to advantage Blacks over whites in college doesn't suggest at all that I think, oh, everything's cool, there's no racism. Of course there is. I'm not suggesting that. All I'm saying is I oppose and disagree with the victim mentality that says everything that happens to Blacks is horrible and bad and wrong and everything, and there's nothing good. And that even if you come up with something good, well, they get preferential. Well, that's not good either, because I like to have rational, intelligent discussions. And I also totally disagree with the concept that there's no biological distinction between the races. I mean, if you want to tell me that the lines of demarcation aren't as clear cut as we think, that to suggest that there's a clear line between, let's say, African American, European, Asian, and that these lines are like solid walls. Obviously, there's intermingling, there's a lot in common, and obviously the racial distinctions that we draw are minuscule, because the races, the DNA that we possess is virtually identical. The differences are so minuscule that they're not very significant as far as drawing distinctions that we sometimes do about, well, this race can do this or this. It's mostly cultural stuff. So I'm not suggesting that.
We all agree with you on that.
But what I am saying is that there clearly are races, and it's a biological difference. It's not like every single person in that race is identical, but there are racial biological distinctions that can be drawn. I think the problem is when you create artificially rigid lines and then you attribute qualities and characteristics to the various races that say that this is genetically inherent in them and this one is inferior to that one, rather than saying that the distinctions that we have are based on other factors. I also wanted to comment when I asked is there anything in the African American community that is responsible for the disparity in the I guess in the let's say the level of violence and what's going on? I think it's harmful for the Black community to say, absolutely not. No, there's nothing that we're doing that is at all responsible for it. There's nothing that the African community has done.
But Rabbi, that's why we talk about critical race theory. Right. Because what you're saying is exactly what most people think. But if you think that with the absence of all the policies and all the practices,
that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. I'm not saying that the disparities are responsible. I'm not saying that slavery hasn't left its vestige. I'm saying all of that. I agree with that. I preach that. I preach the horrors of slavery. I preach the horrors of discrimination. I work with NAACP. I do a lot of work. I'm not saying this.
Let me put it a different way.
Yes.
I was in grade A supermarket one day.
Yes.
And there was a lady there with her Jewish son. And a white person looked at the little boy because he had a yarmulke on, right, and said to him, "You Jew." And the little boy took it off. And his mother said to him, "The difference between you and that man is that you could take yours off, he can't."
I get that. I understand. And I'm not suggesting that having a dark complexion, being Black, is not an automatic target for people, and it's going to set you up with issues and with discrimination. I'm not saying any of that. I acknowledge all of it. Let me just finish my point. Let me just finish my point. What I'm saying, though, is that if that's all you focus on and you take no responsibility, like for what's going on within your community, it's harmful and it's not helpful. And it's not helpful for other people to say, you have no responsibility. It's only because of what these people did to you. For instance, there's a tremendous amount of drugs and violence in the Black community. Now, you could say, well, that's all the white people's fault. It's because we were enslaved. It's because of discrimination. It's because we live in neighborhoods that are gerrymandered. It's because we don't have equal access. That's why it is. And if you say that, I'll agree with you that these factors are responsible for a lot of that problem, but not all of it. And there comes a time.
Yeah, but what I would say is, no. Yeah, you're right. But let me get back though.
Okay.
When you have poor education, when you have that mother at home that Jennifer talked about, my children went to JCC. Some people's children went to their grandmother. Grandmama's sitting down watching the stories. Now, I agree that it could be done differently, but these children start school not being able to be competitive. And a lot of the drug dealing, I don't like the drug dealing. I work against the drug dealing. I work against the crime. But a lot of that is economic survival in their minds. Now, what people like I have to do, I have to go out there every day and work with that. To tell children, a child who's in the 10th grade who cannot read and cannot write, cannot count, at least he tells me he can't count. But I find out that that's not true because he counts the money.
Hey, Pastor, when I said my piece, you said, yeah, you're right, but I'd like to focus more on, yeah, you're right. What is it? Tell me where you agree with that. Tell me where you agree with what I'm saying, because I'd like to know where we agree and disagree. So when you say, yeah, you're right, where do you agree?
I think there's always individual responsibility.
That's good. Okay.
That's good. I think nobody ever tried to escape that. I mean, maybe some people do, but my value is that people have to be individually responsible. Okay.
I agree with you.
But I don't know what happens to a Winton Hill, a Reverend Hill, who's driving the speed limit through Greenwich, Connecticut, and gets stopped, and the policeman says he was going 80 miles an hour and I had to shoot him.
Pastor Hill, I represent.
Hold on, Rabbi Silver, I'm sorry. I just wanted to kind of interject with
Go right
that.
ahead.
And I just wanted to give folks a theme to research. It's something in social emotional health called the theory of trauma. And in the theory of trauma, it takes 7 generations to get rid of a trauma in your family. So let's take somebody who wasn't a victim of slavery, someone who wasn't a victim of Jim Crowism or redlining and all the legislation things that have been done to African Americans in this country. Let's take something, objective. Let's say your great-grandfather was murdered by a gun. Then your grandfather or grandmother probably would be of the mindset that we don't have arms in this house because that's what happened. And that story was told to your parents and was told to you. And that's just 3 generations. And that comes down with, we don't have guns because somebody was a victim of trauma. Now, when you layer that with slavery, segregation, Jim Crowism, George Floyd, police brutality, we've never not been a victim of trauma. So when you go through that 7 generations of trauma, people who behave sometimes are acting off of impulse and as a response of that trauma versus being 100% above board and able to make an informed decision about the next step because they're still suffering. And when you're a part of a society who doesn't acknowledge that, and this is not a victim mentality, this is just growth and development. If you don't have a chance to acknowledge it and other people are telling you, get up, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, what are you complaining about? Then how do you get better?
What I'm suggesting is this. I totally disagree with these idiots who are saying discrimination's over. Get over the slavery, it's all done, don't worry about it, everything's cool. I totally disagree, it's ridiculous. Obviously, the vestiges of slavery are still there. The vestiges of what Pastor Hill's talking about, where if you're Black and you own property, you can't pass it on to your kids, or you have armed mobs in the 1910s and 20s who are burning down Black villages and stopping them from their communities. Obviously, this is clear-cut discrimination is holding you back. But what I'm saying is this. I also disagree on the other side where you say, well, we've been through the slavery, we've been through the Jim Crow, we've been through this, we've been through this. Of course, you start teaching kids like, oh my gosh, you guys you have no chance. It's like you have so many things stacked up again. Now, if you say, well, 7 generations it takes to get over trauma, that's not true all the time. It depends how you respond to it. It's not true. I think the Jews went through a certain amount of trauma in the Holocaust. I think that maybe there was a little bit of trauma. It was not 7 generations before the Jewish people overcame that. Now you can
haven't overcome it. What are you talking about?
Let me finish.
Mr. Silver, you have to acknowledge that you're Jewish before somebody interprets you that way. I don't have to acknowledge that I'm Black before somebody interprets me that way, respectfully.
Let me finish. If you're saying it takes 7 generations to get over trauma, I understand the fact that if you have dark skin in this country, you're at a disadvantage. But what I'm saying is that has nothing to do with the fact that the Jews went through the most horrific trauma you could possibly imagine. Okay? The Holocaust is as traumatic as it gets. You actually have people who emerged from the Holocaust itself, like Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel went through hell and back, and it didn't make him bitter, it made him better. It didn't bring out the beast in him, it brought out the best in him. He went on to become the conscience of the world and went out and tried to prevent this type of thing from happening to others. I'm not saying that everybody's an Elie Wiesel, but I am saying that the Jewish people went through horrific trauma, and 3 years later, they fought and founded Israel. And in this generation, it's not an automatic thing.
Rabbi,
you went through the trauma, so you now got to wait 7 generations before you can recover from it.
Rabbi, you're talking about centuries of history. Many of the Jewish people in Germany had assets. When African American people were set free, they were set free with nothing.
The Jews had no, every penny they had, everything they had was taken away. Everything was taken away. Their name was taken away. They had a number.
Yeah.
All they had was a number. Everything
Now,
that
wait
they
a minute. I want to make
everything they
one more
owned was
point.
taken away.
But I want to make one more point, Rabbi.
Go ahead.
Your trauma isn't over, because the same people who are against teaching anti-bias education, their new rallying call is, let's teach the other side of the Holocaust.
I know. We get the same thing. And the same groups that target blacks target Jews. By the way, I'm an attorney. I represent African Americans who have been targeted by police. I'm not unaware of that. I know what goes on because I've been in the courtroom and I've been in the community. I've worked with NAACP. I know. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I know it happens. And I know that there's discrimination today. I'm just saying that teaching kids a victim mentality and saying that you're not responsible for anything, that
No, I didn't say that.
Well, let me
I've
say this
never
also.
said that.
I know I think you and I are in agreement on this.
Okay.
And also,
Yeah.
I think you'll agree with me that when you have families where you have a huge number of children born out of wedlock, the problems are going to be immense. You're going to have horrible problems in your culture and society when that happens. You'll agree with that too, right, Pastor Hill?
Rabbi Silver, before we get into that, because that is so layered and there is so much to go into that. I don't want to get into the oppressed Olympics. I don't want to say who was more harmed, who was hurt more. Hate is hate, and it's horrible. And it's our job as a team to eradicate it wherever it exists. However, I will point out the fact that the Holocaust, as horrible as it existed, was for a finite period of time, whereas slavery and oppression of African Americans in this country was not a finite period of time. And if we go back to the theory of trauma, we can start counting those generations from the Holocaust. We're not able. And again, this is not the oppressed Olympics. It's terrible. I don't want anybody mistreated.
No, I don't. That's not productive either. I don't go there either.
No,
I'm not saying
but it
who
hasn't
suffered
stopped.
more. I'm not talking about who suffered more. I'm talking about how do we respond to it. By the way, I agree with you that the systematic discrimination and enslavement of blacks over centuries is a despicable thing that leaves a huge stain on American society. And I have no tolerance for people who say, oh, America's the greatest, we never did anything wrong. This is a huge problem as well as genocide. But I will say this about the Jewish community. The Jewish community endured 2,000 years of oppression in Europe, crusades, inquisitions, pogroms, ghettos. The Holocaust was not something that just came out of the blue spontaneously. It was the culmination of millennia of discrimination. But I agree with you. Saying who suffered more is irrelevant and it's pointless. The point is, how do we emerge? And the thing that we should not lose sight of is that blacks and Jews have fought together against this institutionalized racism for a long time. The first leader of the NAACP was Kitty Kaplan, who was Jewish, and Jewish people were very involved in the formation of NAACP. And we have worked together, blacks and Jews, because many of our opponents are the same, our issues are the same, and our biblical inspiration is the same. We are common warriors in all this. And maybe, Pastor Hill, I'll ask you this. Do you have any thoughts about why that relationship that was so close, Martin Luther King, Abraham Joshua Heschel, who were best friends, and the Jewish and Black community working, do you have any concerns or thoughts about whether that relationship is frayed, and if so, why?
Well, I'm gonna answer that, and then I want to kind of hear from Jennifer a little bit. She's been kind of closed out.
Yeah, she's always welcome.
The perception from the African American side is that some Jewish people have chosen their whiteness over their Jewishness. So it was more important for them to be white than Jewish. And that created a schism.
Is not that the very definition of discrimination and racism? If some Jewish people do that, okay, therefore we're done with the Jewish people. Or
I didn't say, you saying we're done with the Jewish people.
No,
I've never said we were done with Jewish people.
I asked you, why is it that the relationship between blacks and Jews is afraid? And you said because some Jewish people did this. In other words, so that's totally wrong.
Yeah, but some Jewish people, the relationship has never changed. We're still in this together.
So what? So what? There's always some people in every group that does the wrong thing. The nature of discrimination and anti-Semitism is that you dislike an entire group of people because what some are doing.
I didn't say that. What I'm saying is, when we're in a battle together, and all of a sudden, the goalpost is changed. I know Jewish people who went to Sacred Heart University and people never knew they were Jewish. They went to Catholic chapel every day. Okay? And all I'm saying is that I'm not judging a whole Jewish nation or the whole Jewish group based on what some people did. But when you're in a battle together, and some people, even Jewish people now, who are saying critical race theory is something we should be bothered with, because they feel like it's in their vested interest to keep the system going the way it is. One man told me not a month ago, my child needs to learn science, not that.
Well, look, we're very straight here at Va-Dor. So I'm going to say this. I'm a civil rights attorney. I've been in the trenches with the African-American community, and I fought pro bono, and I still do, against racial discrimination. But I will just tell you this, that my father, my people have been in the trenches with the African-American community. Some of them died, and some of them went through great sacrifice, and we still do it, and we're still doing it now. Like Jennifer at Temple Sinai, who's devoted to African-American freedom and representation. That's going on all over the synagogues in the United States. The vast majority of Jewish people are liberals, they're progressives, they support the Black community. And I'll just tell you this, when I'm out there with African-Americans and I hear them saying things against Israel, our one only homeland that's been the target of discrimination and violence, and I hear African-Americans who are doing this, and not just one or two, but like pastors from the pulpit or whatever, or Farrakhan, and I don't hear him challenged. I'm just telling you, it's very demoralizing.
Well, they do get challenged. They do get challenged.
That's good. I'm glad they do.
I haven't been on a Zoom like this before, so I'm a little curious. There are several people here who haven't said anything, and I don't know if there's ever time.
Let's open it up. Go right in.
But if I could just say one more thing.
You can say two more things, and then we'll open it up.
Thank you very much. I think part of the issue is that when we see what happens in the Black community, we kind of label it as a Black problem. However, when things happen in the white community, it gets labeled completely differently. So a lot of people, I'm not going to say nobody because I'm sure you've heard it, but people don't say, what is wrong with white people where they have these, young men going out and, shooting up people in, random places? Like, what is the white community doing about that? Because, most of the time that is happening, that is being perpetrated by white men. It doesn't make sense that we label one thing as a Black problem when it's embedded in the systems. There's poverty, there's, the school to prison pipeline. There are all these reasons why the outcomes are the way they are. And yes, people make bad choices. Individuals make bad choices. But to say, you know, that this is something that is because of Black culture or because people are Black, I find very problematic.
Anybody else want to get involved? Anybody want to weigh in here? We've had a lot of people listening patiently to the discussion, which I think was very engaging. Anybody else want to join in? I guess they're going to let us.
Sharon, you're on mute.
I was trying to get everybody off of. Okay. So I wanted to ask a question because I know Jennifer talked about preschool in Stamford specifically. And I know down here in Florida, they have some kind of a free, I think it's free pre-K or something like that. Rabbi, you might know better than me, but I think the first few years of preschool, or of course the parents have to pay, but I think it's when they're 4 years old, right the year before they go into kindergarten, the government pays for it. There's some, I don't know what exactly, it was after my son was grown. And I wanted to ask about that. The other thing I wanted to ask about, we're talking specifically about Jewish people, we're talking specifically about African-American, Black people, but I think there's also issues in the Hispanic community specifically where does the critical race theory, or as Reverend Hill talked about it as anti-biased education, does it also encompass the yellow and the orange or whatever other green, purple, red colors of people that also are subject to hate crimes, hate, violence, bias, and bullying, you know, no matter what color you are or what shade you are.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
bullying
We
goes
have to
on
talk
with
about,
go ahead.
we have to talk about Native Americans. I mean, I'm a third generation Army veteran, a third generation combat veteran. And the truth about my country that I love so much is that we did take the country from the Indians. Okay. As a fact, they never called themselves Indians. We called them Indians because we didn't know who they were. We still have a problem. Some of the people who have been in the United States the longest are Asians, but we treat them as if they're new immigrants because the education has not been put in place. And we really have to tell the story a little bit better than we're telling it.
Pastor Hill, I wanted to ask you a question also. As a pastor, are you concerned about the use of the Bible in the Bible Belt to promote slavery and genocide? Do you see that as partly responsible? Using the Bible to promote?
Absolutely. I have a friend who's a biblical scholar. His name is Aubrey Hendricks. And he just wrote a book about the evangelical church and how it is not theologically Christian.
But why isn't it theologically Christian? I mean, they're taking stuff from the Bible, and it said that in the story of Noah, he had 3 sons, and one of them was Ham, or Ham in Hebrew, and Ham was the progenitor of the African people, and Ham, according to the Torah, committed a sin, and therefore it was said that you shall be a slave to your brothers. And so it seems to me like they're taking it actually accurately from the Bible and using the Bible in its word to inflict slavery. That's why in a congregation Va-Dor, we don't take the Bible as the word of God. We don't take it literally. We say that's an error, that's a mistake, that's a horrible teaching to suggest that one person should be a slave to another and to condone slavery. But if you read the Bible as written, and the Southerners actually did, and they used it to their advantage. If you read it as written, it actually condones slavery and specifically says that the sons of Ham, the Africans, should be slaves. So it seems to me like the problem is Not that
that's
people
not-
aren't being accurate. It's that they are being accurate, but they're taking the Bible literally. And when you take the Bible literally, it invites all types of problems.
Well, no, the truth, and I'm gonna let Jennifer speak, but they did not take the Bible literally.
Why not?
They only
Well,
took
how
that
did they
one
go-
passage. They only took that one passage literally.
And
There
actually,
was-
that was a later justification used by slave owners to justify what they were doing, based on, they wanted to find something in the Bible to justify what they were doing. Abolitionists were using the Bible to talk against slavery. So, I think they were able to do it from both sides. I don't think the Bible necessarily is, I think it can be used as a weapon or it can be used for justice, but, people have used it in many ways, as we all know.
Well, it's
you're
also
right,
been used.
but I think the evangelical church is guilty of not interpreting scripture, but using scripture, and I think it has been a partnership between the church and the society in terms of how we deal with racism, and of course that's an educational issue again. But if you want to take the Bible literally and go back to the story of Ham, then you have to take, if you're a Christian, you have to take the New Testament literally also, where anathema says that you can't treat him like a slave, you got to treat him like a brother. So you can't have it both ways.
But he wasn't talking about the sons of Ham when he said that. That wasn't the sons of Ham. That was like your neighbor or something like that. But the problem is not that they misinterpreted the Bible. The problem is that they took it literally. And it's very clear what should happen to the descendants of
Rabbi,
Ham.
they didn't take it all literally.
No, I know that. There's other passages that obviously they ignored. But the problem is that when you take the Bible literally as the word of God, it's a loaded weapon. And you can just say, well, it says here the sons of Ham, they're the sons of Ham, case closed. It says in the Christian scripture, a woman shouldn't have control over her own body. Therefore, we're going to oppose abortion all over the place. It says in the Jewish scripture that the Jews were ordered to commit genocide against native peoples who lived in Canaan, and God ordered that because they didn't belong. Therefore, we're going to commit genocide against Native Americans because we don't think they belong. The problem is that once you take the Bible literally, you open up a chamber of horrors, and we're going to be killing each other and fighting each other and discriminating against each other forever until somebody says, you know what? We've outgrown this. It's not God's word. This is something that people wrote in a primitive Bronze Age mentality, and we've outgrown it, and we don't take it literal anymore. Once you say it's God's word, it's over. You're just going to be fighting forever.
We have some hands raised. I'm not sure who was first, but Stanley and Rachel, go ahead. Stanley.
Yeah, Reverend Hill. Do you think the messaging about CRT is hurting the cause? And the reason I ask that, the recent elections, fast forwarding to current events, in a lot of states, particularly Virginia, that issue was hit hard, and the school boards were really handed their lunch, so to speak. So I'd be interested in your comments about the messaging.
CRT is the new Confederate flag. People don't know what it means. They don't understand it, but it's the rallying cry. And that's the reason that I suggested that we use the term anti-bias education. Because when you say critical race theory, that by itself for a lot of people leaves more questions than answers. I think was named. I don't like the nomenclature of it.
But that was created by. Go ahead, Stanley.
Well, I was just going to say, do you agree that that was a big influence in the elections that just took place?
I think racism is a big issue, and CRT has become the calling card for racists. I mean, when they asked the man who won the governor's office in Virginia, what did CRT mean? His answer was, I don't know what it means, but I'm against it.
Yeah. Well, critical race theory was invented, or the term was invented, not by the racists. It was invented by people who were trying to get people to be more sensitive to what happened in history and what's going on now. But the thing is that the terminology was misused and a caricature of it was drawn by people on the other side. So the people on the other side were saying, oh, these are people who want to blame all white people and make all white people feel guilty and say that slavery was horrible and that there's no way to overcome it. And so they warped what it was all about in order to manipulate people to be scared and to vote against it. But I think that the people who are promoting this on the other side, the people who promulgated this in the first place, I think that many of them have gone off the deep end, saying that, well, because of slavery, there's no way, there's a victim mentality here, and there's no way you can achieve equality. And I think they've overdone it. I think what we need to do is have objective history. By the way, when I sent my kids to school, I talked to them, I said to them, you're not going to hear the true story. You're not going to hear what really happened. What really happened is there was no manifest destiny across the West. There was genocide from one end of the coast to the other. Genocide by white people against Native people here, often done in the name of the Bible because they were heathens and therefore their soul was corrupted. And so they went out and slaughtered them. And you're not going to hear about that. And then you have slavery, which wasn't just something that was fought about in the Civil War. It was century after century of barbaric treatment. And people were doing that supposedly in the good old days when the United States was a Christian nation. That's what was going on. And women weren't even allowed to own property or even allowed to determine the fate of their own children. They had no custody rights over their own children into the 1800s. And you're not going to hear about these things. And you're going to hear that America is so great. And you're not going to hear that they sponsored and supported dictators. You're not going to hear all that. So I taught them that before they even went. So I said, so if you don't want to get up and say with liberty and justice for all, you don't need to say it. Nobody should tell you what you say. But I also told them this, that in today's world, America with all its baggage has done some of the most remarkable things and stands for freedom. And if we do the right thing, we can get there. And so we should be loyal to the country for what it could be and not whitewash what happened. And I think that everybody needs to have that talk with the kids, because I don't think the history is being taught all that well. I think a lot of things are being swept under the rug. And I also think that the Holocaust is not taught properly at all. What the United States did or didn't do in the Holocaust is just outrageous, that they knew all about it.
And how the United States government did not let Jews from Germany into this country.
They sent them back to their death. It's outrageous under Roosevelt. And you have Jewish people who love Roosevelt. I don't care all the good things he did, all of it. I'll give you all of it. Just sending back a boatload of people to their death and not doing the bare minimum in order to try to prevent the Holocaust. And why didn't he do it? Because he didn't want anti-Semites to say, oh, you're just fighting this war to protect Jews and lose support. This is just despicable. All of these things should be taught openly.
I was born in a little town in North Carolina, and we have no Jews in that town and no Catholics. The only thing you could do is black and white folk fought against each other sometimes, the Baptists and Methodists. It's that kind of history has not been shared much. But I do think that Edith and Jennifer are even a little bit sharper in this than I am. So I don't know if they wanted to say something else before we run out of time.
That would be quite all right. Edith, do you want to just share some concluding thoughts with us?
Sure. Jennifer had to hop off. Unfortunately, she's managing her family and all that comes with that. But I just wanted to thank you all for the opportunity to have a robust discussion. I think that this is what it takes. We are all just a product of our experiences and our exposure. So you don't know better or different until you learn it, until you're exposed to it. So I think, Rabbi Silver, I'm impressed and happy that you have this level of forum. And I think it's important to keep kind of challenging our thoughts and our experiences, to do different, to do better. And above all, regardless of who you call God, that we do God's will. So thank you for this opportunity.
Very, very, very well said. And thank you not only for joining us and engaging in a discussion of some issues that sometimes are uncomfortable, but I just want to thank you for what you're doing in the community, because you're in my hometown and you're doing tremendous work there to try to help people achieve what they should be able to achieve if they weren't held back. And my yarmulke is off to you. I thank you for what you're doing. Now, Pastor Hill, I'll give you the give you the last word, and then I'll wrap up.
Or Rachel. Rachel's had her
Oh,
hand
go
up
ahead.
for
Oh, go ahead,
20
Rachel.
minutes. Go ahead, Reverend Hill.
No, Rachel, please.
You're on mute, Rachel.
You're muted,
You're on
Rachel.
mute. Rachel, you're on mute.
I can find out the answer some other time. I was just curious, how are they going to put a curriculum together? Is it going to be a federal curriculum? Do they have any plan in place to actually how they're going to teach?
Yeah, I can help you answer that, because I've done a lot of work with the
But
school
we'll go
boards.
on, yeah.
The curriculum is decided by school boards. There's state standards, and then the individual school boards set the specific curriculum to match those state standards. It's not set
Okay, that's a
federally.
mess.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a
it's
mess.
There's
not
been
set
a
federally.
recent development, however, in Connecticut, the legislation was passed that Black and Brown history has to be a mandated elective starting in 2022 in all Connecticut high schools. That
Right.
has meant great controversy. There are people who are fighting it tooth and nail. You'll probably see it as time goes on in
Yeah.
the news, but that has been passed and right now it's law.
Okay, thanks a lot. Pastor Hill, why don't you share some concluding thoughts with us?
Yeah, I want to thank you because these issues are so very complex. And one of the fears I have about our country right now is that people want simple answers to very complicated issues. And we really have to kind of hammer our way through. I do feel that our democracy is in jeopardy. And our core values as a country. We have been a great country in this world. We have in some ways been the light of the world. But as of January 6th, and plots to capture elected governors and hold a trial for them and that kind of thing, it seems to be growing. And we have 2 trials going on right now that have national attention.
Mm.
And many people are trying to figure out what the future is based on even those 2 trials. If people can kill people and kind of get away with it because they have political support, then they feel like it's open season to do that.
Thank you.
So,
I'll just wrap up. Oh, go ahead. You have anything else, Pastor Hill?
I want to thank you and thank the temple, thank the congregation for this opportunity.
Thanks. Let me just wrap.
I'll be looking forward to you visiting us when you come to Stamford.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Do you have a ping pong table at your house?
No, we live in a small 2-bedroom condominium.
There you
But
go.
I'll take you to where a pool table is, where a ping pong table is.
You're the best, Pastor Hill. I'll take you up on that. And if you ever want a trip down to Florida, I got an extra bedroom. My kid abandoned us and went off to college, so it's available. Let me just wrap up also. As far as that case with Rittenhouse, I think they should change his name to Rottenhouse, because what kind of a rotten household does he come from, where a mother would drive him into a battle zone with a semi-automatic weapon? I think she should be held accountable too. They should bring her up on charges for delinquency of a minor and all this other stuff. I just also want to say that the African-American and Jewish community have fought hand in hand in the trenches, and we support each other. We've had each other's back historically, and I look forward to continuing that struggle. And I appreciate more than you will know that when we were faced with a president who is a climate denier. The greatest threat that planet Earth ever faced, in addition to all those other faults, and they were many, and all those other problems, including leading an insurrection, when we were faced with that existential threat to our nation and to our planet, the African-American community came through with Stacey Abrams in Georgia electing 2 senators. And it was because largely of the Black community turning out in large numbers, voting for what was right. And I will always be indebted to all of those people that went out there in large numbers and prevented this horrible, horrible destruction of our country and our planet from continuing. So I'm very grateful. And I also am very grateful to you, because we don't have discussions like we had tonight very often. Usually it's all sugar-coated. Oh yes, we all believe the same thing, or it's angry. There's just hate and hostility. Tonight we disagreed agreeably, and I really have great admiration for you, Pastor Hill, in your eloquence, in your love of your people and of the Jewish people and of all people, and you're using religion to elevate people, and to do so by engaging in dialogue. I wish there were more pastors doing that. And like I said, Edith, I wish there were more people doing what you're doing. I welcome you back anytime. And if you want to have a rabbi at your place to discuss things anytime, I'd love to speak about why Christians should celebrate Hanukkah, because Hanukkah represents the victory of the Jews over the Seleucid Greeks 165 years before Jesus. And if they didn't win that victory, there wouldn't have been a monotheism, there wouldn't have been Christianity. And so Christians should celebrate Hanukkah with the Jews, and Jews should celebrate Christmas as the birth of someone who represented great values and ideals. We don't have to celebrate Christmas the way you do as the birth of the Son of God or the Savior. But I have my kids go to churches and celebrate Christmas in a different way, but as a symbol of love and hope and joy. And I think that we should celebrate each other's holidays, work with each other. And tonight we went in a very positive direction towards bringing that type of reconciliation and joining together. I thank you very much for the dialogue, and I look forward to more in the future. And thank you everyone here for joining us in the discussion.
Shalom.